Good morning, folks. The geomagnetic storm is ending. Actually did get up into level 2 category yesterday, but nothing more. We've got an earthquake alert building fast, and we'll do a food watch today as well. First, over at spaceweathernews.com, you may have noticed that the sun videos are having trouble loading. The SDO website has been having major trouble since the solar flare. Obviously just a coincidence. Anyway, if anyone hasn't clicked What is Space Weather up at the top of that page, it's time you became among the top 1% of knowledgeable solar observers on this planet in about 1 hour. Anyway, here's the last 24 hours on our star. Big coronal hole coming in on the north, bright sunspots beginning to depart on the south. They produced the solar flare 3 days ago, and now they're going to the far side of the sun for a timeout to think about what they've done. Magnetogram shows us there is nobody coming in to take his place today. Blank disk on deck. Here's the gravy. Solar wind telemetry showing yesterday's impact, and that, as described, it overtook the coronal hole stream, which seems to be a part of the overall impact. They basically hit as one, with the CME wake leading into faster particles of the coronal hole stream. Geomagnetic storms hit level 2. Not too bad, as expected, but there are still some potential related events to discuss. Let's begin in Chile. It has not been a great 72 hours to live on the southeast Pacific coastline. Thunderstorms, flooding, snowstorms. Now, Chile had a major power outage exactly as the space weather was ramping up, but it was also exactly during a major snowstorm that was taking down trees, so that is always the first guess. However, no such weather in Little Rock, where electrical equipment glitched. A number of explosions were reported across the world yesterday, and a few involved combustibles in a potential arcing event. One of those included a high-tension wire above a cruise siphoning petrol in Africa. Primary airline trouble in geomagnetic storms is not with the airplanes themselves, but always the radar and radio communications. The standard 2 to 3 times increase in reported electrical fires to online news outlets was present as well. Right now, the magnetic perturbations are existing, but not scary. And as you can see, we've got equatorial perturbations as well from the equatorial electrojet, but significantly weaker than those under the aurora. This was a nice break from the Earth-facing quiet and the march to solar grand minimum. As that does approach, we're seeing a lot of the signs in the weather and resulting crop effects that mirror stories from the last minimum period where million-death famines and drought were last common. This is Food Watch. So let's transition from what our food watches have focused on thus far in the central states and head north into the plains where an extreme drought is underway. It is indeed one of the worst they've seen, and there are already significant effects on their agriculture. This is precisely what we don't want to see happening in India, because they had 2 of those million-death famine events, and their monsoon, when it shifts, is like the canary in the coal mine that it may happen again. Dealing with it in southern Europe as well, but not to the north, where they're trying their hand at dealing with some hail, and how about that? We have come back around full circle. Lastly on this front, many of you have seen the video we did with Dr. Senef from MIT. Monsanto makes poison. It's a great watch if you haven't seen it, but while that one is about glyphosate, we've got new news in the Monsanto opposition as Tennessee puts major restrictions on the dicamba pesticide, as it has a funny way of destroying surrounding properties' crops that weren't Frankensteined by Monsanto geneticists. 10 points, Tennessee. Let's pull up the sun one more time, because we're in an earthquake watch for a number of reasons, not the least of which being the kinetic alpha waves and IMF from this coronal hole, which is forecast to be at least twice as strong as what just swept past Earth in the last few days. It is a great time to get your earthquake forecasts into quakewatch.net. Remember, members can win a free ticket to Observing the Frontier and $500 for predicting the next magnitude 7 event. We've got your wind maps and shots of our star to close. We'll do this all again tomorrow, right here, but right now it's 5:15 a.m. in the new Valley of the Sun. Eyes open, no fear. Be safe, everyone.